Welcome to LOP Topic Chats. Tonight's topic will be the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Your host is yours truly, Luke74. If everyone's good tonight, tonight's an interesting topic. Another alien abduction case. We did Travis Walton before, now we're doing this one. This is actually the first documented alien abduction case in the history of alien abductions in the modern age. And one with much information and much proof, in my opinion. Betty and Barney Hill. Barney worked for the U.S. Post Office, and Betty worked for the government. Interracial couple at the time. Barney was black and Betty was white. And many people think this story didn't get much press at the time because they were interracial, which I can kind of tend to believe that. It's in the 1960s. The story starts from they're driving back from Canada, back to New Hampshire, their home. And Barney's driving the car, and he sees a star move. What he thought was a star. And he thought maybe it's a jet, so he got out of the car. And the thing was darting back and forth and coming close to him. He had a gun in his back of his trunk for like wild animals, and he got that out just in case as he's walking his dog. This object got close and it left. Anyway, when they went back on their drive, and it came back again. And once again, he stopped the car, got out, and he's got close to the object. He could see multi-rows of lights, different colored lights on the object, on the UFO, and windows on it. And he claims to see 5 humanoid creatures. They were not your typical grays. They were like 5 foot tall, grayish in color, but their eyes were different. They were almost like cat-like eyes. They were more humanoid than the typical grays. People call they were a different type of grays. Some people thought it was some different kind of alien species, but who knows. And it took off again, and they got in their car, and they kept driving. This time they heard weird sounds, and the object got closer to them again. And next thing they know, they were 35 miles up the road and missing 2 hours of time. So once again, missing time in an alien abduction scenario. Why? We'll get to that eventually in the show. But I mean, you're driving on a lonely road late at night, 10 o'clock at night, and you see something come close to an object. You're probably going to be a little bit scared, a little bit terrified, to be honest. You don't know what it is. I mean, it's not a star, it's not a helicopter, it's not a plane, it's not a weather balloon, it's not swamp gas. It's an unidentified flying object, UFO. Now, after this happened, Betty had recurring nightmares for like 5 nights in a row, and little flashes of memories from what happened. So they went to somebody for hypnosis. Now this is when it gets really interesting, to be honest. Very fascinating. They put him under, and the first one they do is Barney. He's talking about the object again and seeing it, and he's screaming, he's terrified, and the hypnotist had to settle him down a little bit. He was terrified. And every alien abduction I've read about or watched or studied, people are terrified of these abductions. It's not a good time, it seems like. People are terrified. I mean, usually you're seeing a humanoid alien or an alien creature, and your mind probably can't comprehend it. So a wave of fear comes over you. Or perhaps a wave of fear comes over because these are dark creatures, maybe even demons. I've always thought, though, there are alien creatures out there. Anyway, with a brain, you can see, the billions of stars out there. We can't be the only ones that are semi-intelligent. And this is where it gets kind of weird and creepy, to be honest. And now they recollect the UFO landing, and they're still in the car. Humanoid creatures get out of the UFO, come toward the car. They attempt to get away, but the car won't start. They locked the doors, no avail. These humanoid creatures, 5 foot tall, grayish looking, huge eyes, but they're kind of cat-like eyes though. You saw from the pictures of these aliens, they're kind of freaky actually, and creepy too. And they got them out of the car and they forced them inside the UFO. It wasn't like, well, we'll go with you guys. They were forced to come in the UFO. So that right there probably scared the shit out of somebody. It scared me too, and they were terrified and they were screaming during the session. They had to be calmed down a little bit. And finally calmed down. Now they're on board the ship. And various tests are being done to them. When I read and studied, they took semen samples from Barney, they took hair samples, skin samples, blood samples, and with Betty into her navel, probably taking some eggs out possibly, and she was screaming in pain. And the alien sensed this, right? And they put her hand over her forehead, and the pain was gone. So maybe a form of telepathy, where they shut off our pain receptors. But if they can do that, then they probably have sensory abilities of telepathy or telekinesis. And many of the aliens communicate through telepathy, not from like voice, whatever. So interesting there. And they're doing various tests on both of them, and they talked to them a little bit about where you guys from, and their lifestyle, and they gave her a star chart. This is where it gets interesting, very interesting. They show her where they're from. And at the time, there was no constellation mapped out of where they are from. And after this whole abduction thing, she remembered the stars and the pattern of them. And nobody knew what kind of stars they were until later on, years later, and they recognized it as a system. Zeti Reticula. System of Zeti. I mean, you've heard of Zeti talk from probably GOP and Nancy, and that's a story in itself, though, but that's where it comes from, basically. And that's one of the proofs of this alien abduction is a star chart, where I find that absolutely fascinating, where what kind of star pattern it was, what kind of constellation it was, so years later, and they researched it, and it came up with the constellation of Zeti Reticula. Nice, huh? You just can't make that kind of stuff up. You can't put like 7 dots on a piece of paper and it forms to a star system. I mean, it came from somewhere, obviously. And to me, that's proof it's actually happened. And also, they gave her a book of some kind, some written material in it. And they were going to let her have it until one of the leaders on the UFO said, no, it wouldn't be a good idea, and we don't want you remembering this either. And they erased her memories. That's why they didn't remember anything until they got under hypnosis. And the more proof of the abduction is that she had her dress a little bit ripped and there was something like sparkly dust on her. That was tested supposedly, and nothing came back from it. It was not from Earth origin. And like I said, this is the first documented case of an alien abduction. And the proof you have, some of the scars in her bodies, the marks on her bodies, the ripped dress, the dust, or whatever it was on her dress. But the most smoking gun, as I call it, is the star system, or where they're from. And they have to shoulder some trade routes, too. So obviously, if they're in trade with other civilizations or other aliens out there, we're not the only ones out there, and they're not the only ones out there. There's more alien civilizations out there than we could possibly imagine, basically. Interesting stuff. I mean, they were open and forward about it. Most of the time, people are scared of these alien abductions and they're not being talked to at all. These aliens were talking to them about various things, how their planets like Earth kind of in so many ways. It's an Earth-like planet where they're from. Fascinating stuff. And after the session was over, they reported this to the Air Force Base around there, and of course they got nowhere with it. They said it was probably possibly the planet Jupiter. Obviously Jupiter moves around the sky and lands on the ground and stuff. So, but they say they picked something up on radar though. They said it was a jet though. This is obviously no jet. Excuse me. What do you think about this so far, LOP chat? By the way, you listen to Bias Propaganda Radio. We're in a Lunatic Outputs chat room. We have 12 people in there. And Puss in Boots goes, and her dress had something on it out of this world. Yeah, they tested the dress and the dust particles, and it registered absolutely nothing. So, whatever it was from this planet. What do you think, folks? Kyle, what do you think about the story so far, man? You have a star chart that came out to be true years later. Your first ever documented alien abduction case. The first definitive case of the Greys from Scarlett in the chat room. They were grayish though, Scarlett. It wasn't those big black eyes you see. They were more like cat-like eyes, more or less. It was figure big in depiction of aliens. Very good. Yes, it was in the 1960s, I do believe. Virginia. She was asking in the room what year this. It was at the time, I think, because they were an interracial couple, and that was kind of taboo at the time, whatever. Until years later on, press on this, and it's one of the most documented UFO cases of the time. Next to Travis Walton's experience and Willie Strieber. This one takes the cake, basically, you know. And after they came out with their alien abduction stories, other people came out with theirs too, because people were so scared to come forward, you know, oh, I was abducted by aliens. You know, people think they're crazy, whatever, you know, oh, that's bullshit, you know, you're making it up, you're mentally ill, you were on drugs at the time. Since they came forward, more people came forward afterwards too. And it started the phenomenon of the alien abductions, basically. And Scarlett says in the chat room, they set the pattern for extraterrestrials in general, which they did. And interesting note, though, Betty's sister also saw a UFO in the past, too. And help her come forward and help her get hypnosis done to see what actually happened. So, man, this is a hand. Crowd, do you wish to speak in the room? Go ahead.
So I'd like to know if you've read the Bud Hopkins books, Intruders, Missing Time, the whole regressive hypnosis genre of alien abduction literature.
I've read not the book though, but I've read some of the pages from it though, here and there, online and stuff. But they all have the same pattern. It seems like missing time. Their car is found, you know, miles away from what happened. And a lot of these alien abduction cases do have similar things to them though. This one's kind of unique though because it has a star pattern involved, and there's like more physical evidence than most. I mean, this has more physical evidence than the Travis Walton case, to be honest, in some aspects. You know, but the people, like I said, what people like this case the most is the star chart, though. You know, she drew the star chart, and nobody knew where it's from, and you know, the time. And years later, they found out the Rossetti reticular system. Pinpointed it exactly, man. She drew it almost exactly in the paper where it looks like in the sky. That's pretty impressive. How else would you explain that, though? You know, it's like she was drawing random dots on paper and it's formed some constellation. Put some boots in the room, Luke. What do they say aliens look like? Grays or different colored skin? Any other spots? Gray type skin, 5 feet tall, big eyes, but they weren't black though. They have pupils on them, almost like cat, like they said. So it wasn't your typical gray alien. Maybe it's a variation of grays. Who knows? But if you look at one of the pictures, it's kind of creepy looking. When is the show going to start? The show is going on right now. PB, pay attention, please. Put the sauce down, man. Get into you a little.
So I think it's important to note how the star chart was delivered. I don't know if you touched on that. The star chart was not just a star map like we get from, say, NASA or Smithsonian or something. It was actually arranged the way that the stars are arranged in 3 dimensions, and then the position of Zeta Reticuli 1 was determined by matching that up to what we know about the distances of stars from parallax measurements. It wasn't just something like a 2D map like you'd see on a National geographic poster map.
Very good, Cryo. Now, because of that, do you think this was real? Do you think this was an actual alien abduction?
I don't know what to think about alien abductions in general. I mean, a big part of me says, well, there's no reason to dismiss these people. There's a lot of compelling evidence. I wouldn't necessarily say convincing evidence. That goes for my opinions on a lot of topics that we cover here. I would say, though, that after I read the Bud Hopkins books about intruders, missing time, the regressive hypnosis thing, I contacted him directly. He put me in touch with a hypnotist in Carbondale, Illinois. I forget the guy's name. It started with a C. And I wanted to know how these cases were being studied. And apparently they just had this assumption that anybody who contacts them has been abducted, you have memories, and through hypnosis we are going to uncover this. There really wasn't a lot of healthy skepticism involved. It seemed like they had a lot of ideas already about what you would uncover. They sent me maybe 50 pages of material telling me what kinds of things that I might uncover through this hypnosis, which they were going to charge me by the hour to have performed. So while, way back when these cases might have really had something to them, I think that you have to be very, very careful what sources you look at these days and where that information is coming from.
Thank you for that. People who go under hypnosis, they'll usually have like little glimpses of memories here and there, and it's like fading and stuff. They want to know what actually happens. A lot of people do, some don't. I mean, people think, well, they're feeding you the information and stuff, and your mind's making it up. But this case is unique, though. I mean, it's one of the first ones documented, like I said, and through hypnosis, they were terrified through the whole encounter. I mean, it wasn't like a good experience for them at all. Well, I think this is an actual alien abduction. I want to believe in this. I really do. I mean, this is more believable than most that come forward. I think the top 3 alien abductions that have happened that are believable are Travis Watson story, Willie Strieber's, and then Betty and Barney Hill. But I thought Betty and Barney Hill's on top, though. It's the most believable ones because, like I said, the star chart done in 3D. I mean, how else would you do that, She knew nothing about astronomy. She was a social worker. He was a postman, They didn't know anything about star charts or how to design them or fake them, whatever. I mean, what I like to know, though, is this book that she had in her hands they took away. I wonder what was in the book, and what happened if they let her have the book off the ship, though, and we had that book in our hands now? How much more believable would this be? I mean, it's fascinating stuff, One thing I don't get, though, is how these aliens know English. They talk to them through telepathy in English. Unless they studied our language, they mastered it, whatever. But I mean, how often do you hear about aliens talking in a different language when they're abducted? It's always in English, or it's in the language of their country where they're from. And Mizak in the room's ability to interfere with human affairs. They can possess us to do things that seem like it's our own choice. They are masters in the realm of the psyche. Interesting stuff. I mean, most of these alien creatures have abilities of telekinesis or telepathy, basically, and they have like mind abilities that we don't have, or we haven't. Aliens are at war with each other. You see many things online about that. You see pictures of in the 1600s about UFOs over in Europe were fighting each other. These balls, UFOs. It's one of the more famous paintings out there depicting alien battle in the sky. That's supposedly thought. And Crowfax in the room says, "What's wild to me is I have 32 gigs of memory on an SD card the size of my fingernail, but these aliens had books." Yeah, I don't get that either, man. It's the 1960s, and they gave her a book. I mean, I think some of these hypnosis cases you can be influenced though a little bit though, then your mind fills in the gaps more or less. I'm not 100% sold on hypnosis, to be honest. I think some truth comes out though. I think other times your mind makes things up to fill in the gaps. That's been documented many times. And as that goes and jokingly around, they spoke to me in Chinese. I didn't understand them. Now repeat this. Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating case, but there's like little holes in it though, like the book thing, and them talking to them in English. And unfortunately, Barney died 10 years after his abduction, I do believe because of cancer. Puss in Boots wants to talk on the mic. Please talk on the mic, Puss in Boots. The mic is yours.
Thank you. I wanted to ask if there was anybody who actually found out why some people remember these experiences detail for detail as if they stayed awake the entire time, and some only remember in snippets here and there later. And if you think that psychic ability was inherent in the people, they were born with it, or if it's something that progressed over the years through alien abductions and the telepathy that goes in between the person and these aliens, and if they developed other stronger psychic abilities like telekinesis, etc., through these beings, because I would imagine that over a period of time, that would be an ability that would hone itself from use. I don't know if that makes any sense. So, but that.
Well, in this case, I studied that Betty wanted to remember this and tell people about it, and they only said, no, it's not a good idea. We're going to make sure you forget this, and we need the book back. We don't think it's a good idea to bring the book out of the craft into the world. So in this case, Puss in Boots, they tried to wipe their memory because they wanted getting out what happened, basically, and they remembered most of it during hypnosis, though, because they had little flashes of memories from the abduction case. In my own personal abduction case, I have flashes of memory, too, not what happened the whole time. And one of these days, maybe if I get brave enough, I'll have hypnosis done on me, too, to see what really happened. Kind of scared, though, man. You know, I mean, what happened to me? Was it real? Was it an illusion? And we talked about that on Friday's show. Confusing what is real. Rest, too, maybe, yeah. I mean, in some cases they remember everything. In some cases they don't. The majority of the cases of alien abduction, they don't remember the whole thing at all. They have to go through hypnosis or regression of some kind to remember everything. And why they cover that up, who knows? Maybe it's too terrifying for them. Maybe your mind puts a block on it. Maybe the aliens don't want getting out what actually happens on the ships, because, like I said, during the hypnosis of Betty and Barney Hill, sometimes they were screaming during the hypnosis. They were terrified of this, you know? I mean, it wasn't a good time for them, like I said. I mean, how would you feel if you were on a table being examined by these alien-looking creatures? I'm sure you'd freak out, too. I know I'd freak out a little bit. Cryo from the room in the chat, I have a question. Go ahead, Cryo.
I hope that when we finally get out into space, the very first civilization that we find on some other planet, that the first thing that our astronauts do is grab one of the creatures that we find, haul it back to the ship, and stick it full of stuff, and then let it go. Give them a taste of their own medicine.
We do that already with animals, though, Cryo. Come on, let's be honest here, man. Plus with supposed terrorists, we tortured them too. That's a story for another time, though, folks. But yeah, I doubt we'd be too friendly with aliens either. If we were traveling space, you know, and we came across some lesser civilization, you know, and we'd probably test them too, abduct them, do tests on them, and probe them. You never know. Like in the Willie Strieber abduction case, he was probed. He was tested with various means. But Willie Strieber says something really interesting, though. He's not sure if they were aliens or actually demons. He sensed a dark presence within them. He doesn't know if it was like demonic or alien nature. I mean, his story's fascinating. We're going to cover that too. We're trying to get him to come here, by the way. And my wife's working on it, I think. I could be wrong, but getting Woody Schriever to come in for an interview and live chat. I asked you that 2 months ago, dear. Yeah, Woody Schriever would be a good guest here, man. So if you guys know his email or his phone number, give him a call, send him an email. Let's get him in the chat room. Let's interview him. I mean, he's a fascinating tale. You ever read Communion, man? It's a really interesting book. The movie's kind of, it's based in the book, but there's more flair in it to make you watch it, though. It's not exact. Like Fire in the Sky, I mean, the movie's totally different in the book and what happened. I mean, like night and day almost. But the thing is, though, do you believe this story, though, Room? Live chat, listeners out there. Do you believe the Betty and Barney Hill case is an absolute alien abduction? Or was it made up? There's a story out there saying that Mrs. Hill was interviewed for this, and after the recording was off, she goes, I hope I can make a lot of money from this, movies and stuff. Which is okay, though, I mean, but she's doing it for the movies. Did she make it up for the movies, or is she realizing, hey, I got a good story here, maybe I can make some good money off of it, you know? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as you're not lying about it. I mean, if I had a good story to tell and I could make money off of it and it was real, I'd go for it, you know? And the room was discussing jalapeno poppers and grilled cheese sandwiches and Chipotle tonight while we're discussing the alien abduction. You're listening to Biased Propaganda, Radio, and Lop Chat. Tonight's topic is the Betty and Barney Hill alien abduction case. And your host is myself, Cool and Luke74. Puss in Boots, if you could mic up, please. Do you believe this story?
Had a fascination for alien abduction stories, and I've always wondered on so much of the following of stories, because Betty and Barney did set such a precedence in being the first ones, and there has been talk about it, especially the dress. She had a substance on there that wasn't found in any of this earth. So, you know, that gives pretty much credence to the entire thing to me. Just like when they find implants in other abductees and these implants don't have anything that's made out of this world. So, you know, it does give it so much credibility to me. And I'm sure it does with a lot of the rest of the conspiracy community as well. And that's an important thing for me, is the concrete evidence. There's so many out there who have been abducted who may not even know it. And there is evidence that can be left on them or in them that they don't know about. And the one that I know about is the black light dots that only show up under a black light on the face. And it doesn't go away very well. I don't know if it ever goes away. So I find that fascinating that, where do these dots come from if that person was not abducted, So, anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you for that, Puss in Boots. Cryo, I have a question for you. Now, these supposed alien beings took samples of sperm and eggs and blood and skin samples. Why would they need that?
A few thousand years ago, and here's just a few thousand years ago, something happened in the human gene pool that drastically reduced the number of humans. They call it the Toba event. It's actually about 78,000 years ago. They say that the total number of breeding pairs of humans on the planet was reduced to less than 1,000. That means that there's less than 2,000 people alive on Earth at that time. Just like the cheetah, drastically reduced gene pool right now. we're probably still suffering the effects of this dramatically reduced gene pool. And just as we do with animals like the cheetah or the elephant seal, we do what we can to rebreed the genetic diversity of these species so that they can not be suffering the genetic defects that result from the limited gene pool.
Fascinating stuff, Cryle. Always good to have you on the shows. Now I want to touch on something I talked about earlier about when they showed her the star system they were from. They actually showed her trade routes. Trade routes with other aliens. Yeah, it's true. And it makes you kind of wonder, though, if this is true, how many alien civilizations are out there near us? Could it be hundreds, thousands, maybe a couple? But I've said this before in shows, and I'll say it again until I'm blue. I believe the universe is more full of life than we could ever possibly imagine. I think it's filled with intelligent creatures. Well, why limit itself known on the planet, Luke? Well, it's a good question, actually. Probably because they have regulations and laws and rules, you know, like in Star Trek. What's that called again? They have a oath on Star Trek, they can't interfere with other civilizations. What's it called? Anybody in the room? Prime Directive. Silent for the win. UQ. Prime Directive. I think some of these aliens have a league, probably like a federation, like Galactic Federation. They have rules. You can't interfere with somebody that gets to a certain level of technology. And let's be honest, folks. We're not exactly that, you know, advanced. We can't travel the stars. We can barely make it to the moon, if you believe that. So they're probably not going to interfere with us. Or maybe have an agreement with the government saying they can do experiments on us for their technology, which I've read about and studied about ufology. I think one day, though, we're going to be really awakened. We're going to look out our window, there'll be UFOs everywhere, saying, hey, we're tired of waiting, here we are, let's talk. You know, disclosure, alien disclosure, you know. What bothers me a little bit is that all these presidents come forward, you know, like Obama and Bush and others, saying, hey, we're going to get this truth to this beautiful phenomenon, you know, this is before they're elected, and they get elected, and you never peep out them afterwards, you know. And I remember Bill Clinton saying that, you know, I'm going to get to the bottom of this UFO phenomenon, I'm going to give you the truth. We never got it. Obama said the same thing. We never got it. They wanted us to come forward, but they can't. There's rules, there's, you know, regulations, Bob, when you're in government. I'm sure they were sat down by the CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, saying, hey, you know what? This is the truth of the matter. We're being visited. We're in contact with other aliens, but you can't say anything to the American people. You want to, but you can't. I think it's one of the reasons why JFK got assassinated, to be honest, among other things. He knew the truth, and he wanted to tell everybody about it. He was about ready to come forward with the UFO phenomenon, too, if you study that. And weeks later, he was assassinated. So that's going to be a show one of these times. It's going to be a big show I'm going to be doing in the next couple of months or so. But what is real, though? I mean, do I believe alien abductions are real? You betcha I believe they're real, but I don't think they're happening as much as people say they are. People are getting in the bandwagon a little bit. Hey, I was abducted by aliens. I'm going to write a book, make some money off of it, you know, or they just want to be famous about it. But what makes this case so unique is it's the first documented alien abduction case in modern times. So she didn't get this information from somebody else. It wasn't made up, in my opinion. I think it was real, you know. And right after this happened, other people started coming forward because they were scared to come forward. And it started the era of the alien abduction phenomenon. Travis Walton, Willie Strieber later on, many people claim to be abducted by aliens. You know, you have the Pleiadian thing with the beam ships with Billy Myers, you know, the beam ships or whatever. He came forward too eventually. But I mean, how many of these are real and how many are made up? You know, if these are real, if one's real, it means we're not alone in the universe. There's more intelligent life out there, obviously. We're not the only ones. And if you have a brain, to me it's common sense, you know, you have the universe teeming full of life. Tonight's show was, I want to do because it's a personal favorite of mine. It's believable. There's proof of it, you know. And it's the first one that came forward. And give them a lot of credit coming forward too. There were an interracial couple at the time, a black person and a white person coming forward about it. And back then it was taboo, more or less, The government says 90% can be explained. Yeah, I think the government's full of shit, though, Liberty, to be honest. Do you believe anything the government tells you? Of course not. You're a libertarian. You don't believe in the government. The government lies to us all the time about many things. I wouldn't trust the government either. Well, if you study this phenomenon, you look it up, YouTube it, you read books, you read websites on this phenomenon, they have many things in common. Missing time, samples being taken, being terrified. So I believe this is a real phenomenon. I really do. And every year here, more and more cases come on forward about it. And maybe one day, all the governments of the world will come forward and say, hey, this is real, we're not alone. I think we're trying to slowly build up to that too, though. You see in movies more and more, and on TV, and in shows, more things with the alien phenomenon. Before it was taboo to talk about it, and everybody's talking about it. It's being introduced more to movies, and they're slowly preparing us for disclosure. And when that happens, our reality, our world will change forever. It may frighten some people. Some people might lose their minds over it, but we know it's coming eventually. That one day, officially, we'll know that we're not alone in the universe. Betty and Barney Hill learned this the hard way. They didn't go up to the ship willingly. They were dragged to the ship. Okay, they grabbed them out of their cars and they dragged them to the ship. Not real nice, is it? And I'd be kind of terrified too. I'd be yelling and screaming like a little girl, during hypnosis. But how else would you handle that? Cryofax has a question he wishes to address in the show. Go ahead, Cryo.
You say this is the first case in modern times. This is the first publicized case in modern times. You got to imagine 1960, we didn't have the internet. Now we're in a day when you can tell people all over the world what you had for breakfast. Back then, if something really important happened, the only way that it would ever get into the public record is if it got into your local newspaper. Aside from major broadcast outlets, which were really in New York, Chicago, LA maybe, there really wasn't a whole lot of mass media. If you wanted to tell something that something happened to you, you didn't have a lot of options. So imagine, say, just a conservative figure, 1,000 of these cases might have happened between 1947 and 1960, and that's a very conservative estimate, and 1,000 out of the millions and millions of people in America. And how many of those would have even been reported to so much as the local newspaper, much less actually getting a story written about it and it getting published and getting national attention?
Real good point. And supposedly millions of people every year are abducted by aliens or have alien encounters. So yeah, there wasn't what we have now with the internet. Where you can ask anybody in the world, basically, hey, I killed somebody in Brazil, I was abducted by aliens. Now, it's a possibility with the internet. Like you said. But back then, though, there wasn't really a way to get things out. And, sure, with the paper about it, I was abducted by aliens, if I just laugh at you, or whatever, that's bullshit. You were drunk last night. Shut up, And Liberty in the room, who's also our producer, this was around the time Operation Mockingbird was instituted. So the media was fully compromised. Very good. You can't really cover something up nowadays with the internet, Facebook, you have Twitter, everything else. Anything major would have happened these days, it'd be around the world instantly. There'd be no way to cover it up. Mintex in the room says, why do people believe they're being abducted by aliens? Maybe they were. Maybe it's a cool thing nowadays. Hey, man, so would I. But maybe, and everybody goes, they used to think they were contacted by angels. Angels, demons, spirits, pixies or whatever. But now everybody can come forward online. Back then, though, it's very hush-hush, and Only famous cases you got was when the UFOs flew over Washington or the Roswell thing. But other than that, though, you know, I mean, there wasn't no internet back then. There was no way to get things out, like Crowell said. And light beings and Liberty goals. Now people are starting to worry about AI, the new hidden hand. What's really scary about that, Liberty, is there was a report about a robot saying humanity should be destroyed. That's Terminator stuff, basically. You know, it's like we're not worth it, we're a danger to ourselves, that humanity should be destroyed. And that's one of the things that if aliens, not aliens, but if robots became sentient and started thinking on their own, how would they feel about humanity? Would they want to help us or destroy us? That's another show, and we're getting a little bit off topic on that, though, but you never know. And there has been alien abduction cases about people abducted by robots, too, by the way. Few and far between, though, but they're out there. By robots, dimensional beings, energy beings, greys, humanoids. But the aliens in this case were like the gray type almost. Not the grays, though, because they didn't have the big black eyes. They had big eyes, but they're like cat-like with pupils. They had gray skin, no hair, slit for mouth, small nose. Your typical gray that's like almost hybrid or modified, it seemed like. Now we're coming to the end of our show, though. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it bringing it forward to you guys. I mean, this is the first documented alien abduction case in modern times. I mean, yeah, there's reports back in cave times, reports, you know, in the 1800s or so, but this is the first one that's well documented with some samples, the dust on the dress, the star chart. I mean, overwhelming evidence, and as Crowell said, it was a 3D star chart. It wasn't two-dimensional. So on Friday, we'll be doing a show on confusing what is real, my search for the truth. As we go into abduction experiences, my experience with the paranormal, and try to determine if it was real, or maybe something made up in my mind, which to me was real, though. To all these people who were abducted by aliens, it's real to them. But was it real in reality, though? Or was it something your mind filled in the blanks because you couldn't figure something out yourself? So thank you for showing up the show. The abduction case of Betty and Barney Hill. Join us next time. Thank you for listening on Biased Propaganda Radio. LOP Topic Chat. This has been your host, Ku and Luke.